Okay, so tonight's presentation is on phonological awareness for multilingual learners, what, why, and how. So I would like to present to you my teacher, my mentor, Dena Nahas. She was my practicum instructor. She was my practicum instructor at Fairleigh Dickinson University and the Children's Dyslexia Center. I know you will find her as informative as I did and as helpful. She breaks everything down so clearly, and I hope you are ready for an amazing night. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Dena to get started.
Kathy and I are sharing one computer for audio. So can everyone hear me? Just a thumbs up if you can, or do I need to speak louder or scoot closer? Okay, perfect. So just to get started, our tonight's goals are going to be talking about what is phonemic awareness, why it's important for multilingual learners, and how to assess it and how to teach it. Keep in mind that this is a very broad topic, so Kathy and I tried a really good best job to put as much information as we can into this presentation and as many activities as we can within the time frame that we have to share with you. Okay. So if we don't get to all the activities today, which we didn't plan to, they're there as a resource for you, as well as other resources that you could use to look back on as you try to implement some into your classroom, or if you're working with other students outside the classroom. So let's get started. What is dyslexia, right? To get started. So the definition of dyslexia at first caused a lot of controversy between professionals, right? And sometimes it wasn't even used within the school districts because of this controversy. And unfortunately, this prevented or delayed instruction for children who needed it. So the term was defined. So dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is a neurological in origin, is characterized by difficulty with accurate or fluent word recognition and poor spelling and decoding abilities. These difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of language that is often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities and the provision of effective classroom instruction. So today we're going to be looking at that phonological component of language, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So what? So let's dive a little deeper into what phonological awareness is and what phonemic awareness is. So phonological awareness, phonics, and phonemic awareness, these terms are sometimes used interchangeably, which can cause it to become a little more confusing. So let's take a look at what they mean and the relationship that they play with each other. So phonological awareness, I want you to take this and think of it as the umbrella, right? It's the broad term, and there's categories that fall underneath that umbrella, okay? So phonological awareness is the ability to notice the sound structure of spoken words. So, which is a child's ability to manipulate the property of spoken words, such as a syllable, right? So if you give them the word cat, they're able to say the word cat, feel their chin drop, hear one vowel sound, knowing it's one syllable. They're able to identify initial sound in a word. They're able to identify rhyming words or produce rhyming words, or be able to manipulate phonemes within a word. Okay, so the umbrella, the broad term. And underneath that falls phonemic awareness, which I want you to think of as phoneme, phonemic awareness. Phoneme means sound. Phonemic awareness is the ability to manipulate sounds in the word. And sounds are our smallest unit within the word. And since reading is dealing with sounds of letters, phonemic awareness is the most essential part of phonological awareness that we need for reading. And then the last term, phonics, is a system approach to reading that focuses on the relationship between letters and sounds. So letter-sound correspondence, right? If you hold up the letter S, the child knows it says S. Right? So these are our different terms that we're going to be using throughout the presentation today. Thank you. So this is just a visual that kind of just shows you what we just discussed. So phonological awareness is your umbrella. Underneath it on the left side, you have the rhyming parts, you have the syllables, the initial sounds, alliteration. There's other things that could fall underneath there, right? This is just a broad picture right now. And then to the right underneath phonological awareness is phonemic awareness, which is your ability to manipulate sound. So substituting a sound in a word, adding a sound in a word, isolating a sound in a word, deleting a sound in a word, which we're going to dive more into that eventually. Now, phonological awareness as a whole, including both those parts, is the foundation for phonics. And phonics is the ability to know letter sound correspondence. So we said if we hold up the letter S, the child could say S, right? And that is the foundation for phonics decoding. If you present a child with a word in front of them, they're able to say each sound and then blend it together, right? So if you present them with the word cat, they could go at cat. And that is the phonics foundation for reading. Right? So all of these build upon each other to get us to be able to teach a child how to successfully read. This is just another visual. I'm not going to dive so much into it or talk too much about it, but it's the same kind of concept. Phonological awareness is your umbrella. Here's some parts that fall under it. And then it breaks phonemic awareness down even further to your early phonemic awareness skills, some kind of basic phonemic awareness skills, and then your advanced ones, which we will go into further as we go. Thank you. So levels of phonological awareness. So David Kilpatrick did a lot of studying different researches and studies, and he analyzed his findings. And what he saw is that there's different stages of phonological awareness, and these stages are needed to progress through that. So early phonological awareness, which he says starts more in the preschool age student, is the rhyming, the alliteration, segmenting syllables. If you say sunset, the child could go sun, set. First sound fluency. If you said bat, the child could tell you that the first sound is b. Okay, so he's saying that you need these skills before you can move to the basic phonological awareness skills, which happen more in kindergarten, in the beginning of first grade, and throughout. So phoneme blending and phoneme segmentation. We're going to go into those exactly later on in our presentation. And then you need that for advanced phonological awareness, which he says you continue to need during 3rd and 4th grade to help build vocabulary, which is the manipulation of phonemes, deleting a sound, substituting a sound, and reversing phonemes. So the next 2 slides is just kind of a quick breakdown of different categories of phonemic awareness. I keep saying it, we're going to go into it more, but just so you have a quick understanding of what each one is, I'll go through it a little quickly right here. So isolation, you could isolate the first sound, initial sound. You could isolate a final sound. You can isolate medial sounds. You always want to start with initial to final to medial because you want to go from easy to hard. So Kathy, could you help me out here? Yes. What's the first sound you hear in the word? Say sit. Sit. What's the first sound? S. Perfect. So this is just done orally. At first, we might start teaching it with manipulatives so the child could visually see, but your end goal for phonemic awareness is always that the child could do it orally. So we're just going to demonstrate right now doing it orally. So the next one is blending. They're going to blend the sounds together. Very simple. Kathy, your sounds are s, it. What's your word? Sit. Perfect. This is segmenting. They're going to segment the sounds in the word. So they're going to technically isolate each sound one by one. Say sit, sit. Could you segment your sounds? S, it. Perfect. Now these are more of your advanced skills. So these are more challenging, and those previous skills need to be mastered or understood to some extent before having a child progress forward, because these could become a little bit more challenging. Okay, so addition is adding a sound to the beginning of the word. So Kathy, say it. It. Add s to the beginning. What's the word? Sit. Okay, perfect. Deletion is deleting a sound from the word. Say sit,
Sit.
take away s. What do you have?
It.
Perfect. And the last one is substitution. Say sit,
Sit.
change the s to a p. What do you have?
Pit.
Perfect. We'll go a little further in different types of activities later on. All right, so why? Why should we teach this? Why is it important? What research has said that proves that this is good instruction within our classroom, right? So in 1997, Congress asked National Institute of Child Health and Human Development to work with the U.S. Department of Education to establish a national reading panel. This national reading panel consisted about 14 members, and they had different backgrounds: administrators, working teachers, and scientists of reading, okay? And what they were supposed to do, their goal, their purpose, was to determine the most effective evidence-based instruction on how to teach a child to read, how to implement it in the classroom, and how to get it out to the schools. Okay, so after analyzing over a couple 100,000 articles, they came to the conclusion, right, in a very bullet point way here, the best way to teach reading is through explicit instruction and phonemic awareness, systematic phonics instruction, method to improve fluency, and ways to enhance comprehension. So explicit instruction and phonemic awareness is one part of the best ways to teach reading, but we still need that one part along with everything else to really make sure that our students are successful.
Okay, so after the National Reading Panel put out their report, since they did not look at any studies with multilingual learners, the National Literacy Panel on Language Minority Youth was put together to look at studies with language learners. And they also found that phonological awareness was predictive of ML's future reading development. So their ability to manipulate sounds also predicted their ability of future reading success. And they also found that both multilingual students and monolingual students with reading disabilities exhibited similar weaknesses in basic phonemic awareness tasks, phoneme recognition, and phoneme deletion and substitution. They also found that phonological processing skills are more predictive of word reading ability than oral language proficiency, highlighting the importance of also focusing on phonemic awareness for multilingual learners. Research does demonstrate strong similarities in reading disabilities between English first language and second language students. So this tells us that we should not automatically attribute their reading difficulties just to the fact that they are multilingual learners, that their deficits in phonemic awareness are also likely causing them to have difficulty reading. So a lot of the times teachers will say, oh, well, they're still learning English, but we don't want to just chalk it up to, oh, they're multilingual learners. We also want to look at their skills in phonemic phonological awareness.
So keep going further on the National Reading Panel. The results also show that phonemic awareness was highly affected across grade levels, across age, a variety of learners, and environments. And it is proven to be the most significant way, more than any other way of teaching a child how to read, right? It has the most improvement on how to teach a child how to read. And I think this line is the most important. Phonemic awareness instruction helps children strengthen their ability to mentally process the sound in speech. Okay, so that's really the key, right? So phonemic awareness is critical for reading. It supports the understanding of sound and grapheme correspondence. It helps mapping sounds onto ladders to decode and spell. It helps students recognize decoded words faster, and it facilitates reading accuracy. So this side kind of breaks it down and gives an example, right? You know, poor phonemic awareness equals phonological processing deficits, which means it hinders reading development by making it difficult to learn phonics, sound out words, remember written words, and spell words phonetically, right? We're saying that all of this builds upon each other so that a child is successful at reading. So here are some examples, right? You give your child the word frog. You say, spell frog. And they write F-O-G. They write fog. Well, what's happening? What's happening is that they're not perceiving that second sound in the blend. They're having a difficulty isolating that second sound in order to spell. So therefore, they need explicit instruction and phonemic awareness with isolating sounds and words in order to be able to apply this skill to spell that word accurately. So the same thing for reading. The word flat is in front of your student, and they go at. They say the sounds perfectly, right? So their phonics there, their letter correspondence is good, but now when they try to take those sounds and blend it together, they say fat. Well, what's happening there? Something similar, right? They're not able to hold on to all those phonemes. So that's telling me that their phonological memory is weak. And if their phonological memory is weak, then we need to work on more phonemic blending done orally, right? So being able to do it without the letters in front of them, try to scaffold back so that they can apply this phonemic awareness skill to be able to read, to use phonics decoding, to sound out and blend those words together, those sounds together to create a word. So this is another thing that came from David Kilpatrick, and along with his studies and what he analyzed and what he found. And pretty much what it's saying is that you need this and this to get this, right? Kind of what we were talking about. Everything builds upon each other. So you need to have letter and sounds. You need early phonological awareness, right? To be able to learn those sounds and letters and the correspondence. And then you get phonics decoding. But in order to have that, it requires letter and sound blending, which is basic phonemic awareness, right? And then in order to have that, you get orthographic mapping, which requires letters and sounds skills and advanced phonological awareness. So it's once again, it's just showing how phonemic awareness ties to phonics and how you need one another in order to have the child to be able to successfully read.
So just a little bit about why phonemic awareness is also important for students if their first language is Spanish. But even in their L1, especially if their L1 is not opaque, so if it's like a transparent language. So knowing the sounds within syllables is key to understanding the alphabetic system in Spanish. Research shows that while syllabic awareness is a strong predictor of later reading skills, phonemic awareness is also important in Spanish. And this sometimes gets some pushback, but we are learning more and more that teaching students to read at the phoneme level in Spanish is also important, not just the syllable level. Knowledge of phonemes do support students' ability to decode increasingly longer and more complex words. So just to kind of sum up here, yes, phonemic awareness is also important in English instruction for our multilingual learners, and it does also benefit and strengthen their word reading in English when we teach it also in the L1. So the skills transfer over to English as well. And interestingly, when you teach phonemic awareness in the L1, it transfers to all other languages, and it also transfers to word reading in English. So phonemic awareness also correlates with word reading in English. So research is supporting this, that this instruction is necessary for students to be successful for reading in both Spanish and English. So I just want to throw this in here. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but I found this to be really interesting. There was a study done that showed that students who did not get phonemic awareness training in Mexico were compared to students who did get phonemic awareness training learning here in the United States. And the students in the United States who were learning to read, they had stronger phonemic awareness skills than the students did in Mexico. But the students in Mexico who were learning to read in Spanish ended up outperforming in reading abilities the students who were learning to read here in the United States. And that's because Spanish is such a transparent language. So these skills are not, this study showed these skills are not as necessary in a language that is more transparent. So I do think we have to remember when students come here with weaker phonological awareness skills, it doesn't automatically mean that they have a learning disability or a reading disability. It just means that they were instructed differently. And so we need to just be aware of that fact that they might not have had this education, they might not have had or needed this training. But we do know that for opaque languages, such as English, this training is essential. So we do need to build those phonemic awareness skills in order to help them succeed in English. So just some quick diagnostic considerations. An older student with consistent English instruction in the United States who still struggles with phonemic awareness, that will likely signal a red flag and will indicate genuine reading difficulties. Whereas a newly arrived Spanish-speaking student with weak phonemic awareness will hopefully improve their skills with explicit instruction. So the key is to provide targeted PA instruction before making any determinations that the student is struggling. So we just wanted to point out that phonemic awareness is in the kindergarten and first grade NJELA standards. They're here for your reference. Also important to point out that these are skills needed to be successful in reading in English, no matter what age, no matter what grade. So if you get like a third grader or an eighth grader, it's still important to look at these skills, even though they're in the K1 standard.
Okay, so the how, right? How are you going to do this in the classroom? What has research said on how we should implement it? So the National Reading Panel suggests that the PA should be part of reading instruction for all children starting at preschool. Emergent readers, English language learners, and struggling readers of all ages benefit from phonological awareness instruction. However, for multi-language learners, there might be some kind of few adjustments that you're going to have to make to the activities to be conscious of transferable sounds from each language. Perfect. So how are we going to teach it? It's very broad. There's so many skills, right? So the National Reading Panel said it should be taught in a typical developmental sequence. What that means is that the instruction should proceed from larger speech units, which are your syllables, to smaller speech units, which are your phonemes, okay? And it should be taught in a small group setting if possible, right? That's the most beneficial way to teach it. Allows for more one-on-one instruction and really to target your groups to have students that all have the same deficit so that you could work together. And then they also found that out of all the phonemic awareness skills, blending and segmenting instruction exert significantly larger effects on reading development than any of the other ones, which we'll show examples as we go. So this is just a gradual release. I'm not going to go too depth in this because it's just good teaching practice, and I know we all do this. So it's an I do. When you're looking at let me back up, sorry. When you're looking at a deficit, right? You give a phonemic awareness assessment and the child scores below 80% on that assessment. We say it's a deficit and we're going to teach it. So when I'm teaching that for the very first time, I'm using this gradual release. And I'm going to start with an I do. As the teacher, I'm going to model it. Then eventually we go to a we do. The student and I are going to do it together with our own chips, our own board. We're going to do the activities together. And then eventually I'll release it to the student to do it independently. However, for phonemic awareness, we want to use manipulatives to do these activities when we're first teaching them. Why? Because we're trying to take something that's so abstract that we're doing mentally and make it as concrete as possible so they could visually see what we're asking them to do. And when then they are able to see that and able to do it with the manipulatives, we're going to take those away and do it orally, because that's your end goal. We want to be able to do these skills orally without any visuals, without any manipulatives. So keep in mind, as you get to the you do with manipulatives, if the child is getting it, you don't have to do it orally, going through all the gradual release again. You could say, hey, I'm going to give you a challenge. You've been doing a great job with these. Let me take these chips away. I want to see if you could do it without them. And if the child gets it, great. Just keep giving them some more orally, and then we move on. So you don't have to go back through that whole entire gradual release of teaching that skill.
So these are some assessments that we got from the internet. The ones on the left are free. The ones on the right are for purchase. But basically, you're going to give the student different subtests in the different skills, such as blending, segmentation, and then you're going to see where the deficits are. The assessment will indicate the deficit, and then you will easily be able to see the phonemic awareness skills or phonological awareness skills that the students need support in. I just want to say also, all the resources will be in a Padlet that we show you throughout the presentation. So part of the how is my favorite part, cross-linguistic transfer. So we want to determine the similarities and differences in English and the first language to ensure that we really get to those sounds that do not exist in the first language, because those are going to be the trickiest. And we want to teach skill gaps first with sounds that transfer. So if your child doesn't know how to isolate a sound, for example, you're going to try to stick with words and sounds that transfer because you're working on the skill of isolation. Whereas when you want to focus on the sounds, the phonemes that do not transfer, you want to make sure that they're pretty solid in the skill, because we don't want to cognitively overload them. So sounds that exist in English but do not exist in Spanish are here for you. So those would be something we would want to teach into once the skill, for example, of isolation is strong for them. And here are just some common errors that you could expect from a multilingual learner whose first language is Spanish, such as deletion of final consonants B and T because they do not appear in Spanish, using the trilled R instead of the English R. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with these types of errors. So again, really quickly, targeting skills versus phonemes. Based on your purpose, you're going to pick words accordingly. When you want to target PA skills to address deficits, again, use words that and sounds that are more familiar to the child. And then when you're targeting new sounds that are potentially difficult for your student, you're going to do that with a skill that they're pretty solid in. And we're going to show you some examples of this.
All right, so this part is all our activities. So we're going to go through, try to get through one from each category that we have. There are other activities for you, so you could go back and use it as a reference. The way each activity is set up the procedure and then the error correction for it are very similar. So hopefully after we show you a couple, when you go back to look at the other ones, you'll understand what is going on there, and it should be very clear. Also, before we get started, the way they're all set up is that we're going to show you how to do it with manipulatives, and then there's an activity that's done orally, and then there'll be a final isolation with manipulatives and then done orally. So we kind of done that type of examples throughout for each category. So you see how it's done with manipulatives and then orally. Also, we're going to start this as like Kathy has already gone through the gradual release. She is at the you do part, okay? She could do this somewhat on her own. We don't have time to go through that whole gradual release, and I know that you guys probably know how to slowly teach a child to be able to do a skill. All right, so I'm going to be the teacher. Kathy is going to be the student, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to pull up a big mat and chips in front of you on the screen, and I'm going to read off the procedure that is on slide, do you know the slide number?
40. It looks like.
Slide 40.
Yeah.
So if you want to pull up your PDF so that you have the procedure in front of you while Kathy projects the board, you can. If you just want to listen and sit back, that's totally fine, but we just wanted to let you know how we're going to do these activities.
Or if you don't have the PDF yet, you can just take a picture with your phone or a screenshot, but this is what Dena's going to be reading off of while I'm doing the activity on the bigger board so you can see it.
Okay, so the first activity that we'd like to model for you is isolating the initial sound in the word. Okay, so you're going to use some chips, you're going to use a mat, and then you're going to have a list of words or something that you could use to add to a multilingual learner's activity is picture cards, right? Another way to build vocabulary for them so that they get used to the language and the vocabulary words that we're going to be using. You good? You
Yep.
ready? Okay, perfect. So as the teacher, I'm going to set up the chips already on the mat because I don't want them to segment the sounds and then isolate. That's two skills in one. I just want to focus on isolation. So I'm setting up the chips, so they're set up. And now I'm going to proceed through the procedure. Okay, so I'm going to say, Kathy, say pen.
Pen.
Put your finger in the first sound or put the mouse on the first sound. Pull down that first sound and say it for me. Perfect. What sound do you hear in the beginning? Perfect. So since Kathy did that correctly, you will just keep doing this with as many words as your time allows. So remember, it's one part of your reading instruction, so you may only spend a couple minutes here. However, if Kathy did it incorrectly, then we need to error correct. We can't go to another word yet. We want to make sure the child understands why they did that wrong, and we're going to model it for them. So I'm going to flip to slide 42, and that's where the error correction is broken down for you. And this is what I'm going to model. And Kathy's going to bring back up the board. Okay, so now I'm going to do it with the same exact word so the child can see how to do it correctly. So I'm going to have my chip set up again, and I'm going to say the word pen. My word is pen. I'm going to say it slowly. Pen. Okay, I'm going to point to the first chip. I'm going to pull it down and say the first sound. Okay, now Kathy, I want you to try that again. I'm going to have Kathy now do it with the same word that she erred on so she could correct her own mistake. Otherwise, learning does not occur. So Kathy, say pen.
Pen.
Say it slowly for me this time.
Pen.
Great, pull down that first sound. Beautiful. Now Kathy got it correct. I could go back to the previous slide, slide 40, and follow that procedure and continue with the words that I have for that activity. However, if Kathy got it wrong, or if each other word that you're presenting to the child, they're erring on, then that's telling you, wait a second, they're not ready for this orally or with the chips, and we need to go back to we do. So then you and the student will do the rest of the words together, meaning you will have your own mat and chips, the student will have their own mat and chips, and you'll physically do each step together until you start seeing the child answering before you or quickly, enough that you're like, okay, they're ready to try again by themselves. Okay. Want to do this one?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So this is also isolating the first sound in the word, but the reason we picked this is because Kathy explained that usually students don't, well, English language learners, right?
Right.
Don't have the sh sound in Spanish, so that they usually say ch. So you could pick a sound that's not transferable and use a phonemic awareness skill to help them hear that sound or be more aware of that sound in order to practice that sound. So just a little prior knowledge is that you probably should have taught SH to them and introduce what SH is, the sound, where it comes in the word before we start doing these activities. Okay, so for this one, you're not going to have manipulatives. All they need is their hand and their thumbs. Okay, so what I'm going to do is say, repeat the word after me, and then I need you to put your thumb up or down if the word starts with a sh sound. Okay, say ship.
Ship.
Put your hand in front of your mouth as you say ship.
Ship.
Do you feel a continuous flow of air?
Ship. Yes.
Okay, does ship start with sh, thumbs up or down?
Ship.
Perfect. When we say the sh sound, if you put your hand in front of your mouth, you're going to feel it blowing onto you, and it's a continuous flow. But when you say the ch sound, it's a short puff of air, right? So that's another kinesthetic way to help the student feel and also hear the difference in the word in the sounds until they become more comfortable with them. Now, your word list, we put a model word list on the bottom. You have to be when you select your words, you have to be critical based on the student that's in front of you, right? So if the student's really good and you feel like they really have it, you could make it challenging by adding words that have SH, CH, and the words without SH or CH. So ship, cheese, dog. However, if you're in like the beginning stages of having the child become familiar with the sound and comfortable with this sound, I probably wouldn't add CH words in yet. I would just do SH words and then words without SH or CH until I know that they're really hearing the SH sound in those words, and then I would challenge them.
So I wanted to just show you that this is another option for you. It is going to be in the materials where you could use this. It has a ship on it. And you can make these different mats for different sounds that you're teaching. But you could use this mat as well for the activity we just showed you where they isolate the sh sound. So this could also be used for that, where they would pull down the sh sound in the beginning of the word.
So this would be the error correction for the activity. It's the same thing that we just did with the other activity. You're going to model it as a teacher. You're going to use the same word. You're going to model it, and then they're going to do the same exact word over to error correct themselves. And then you would continue with the procedure as you were with the other words you have. However, same thing. If they keep getting it wrong, if they're struggling, we need to stop and we need to go to we do stage and do it with the student to help guide them to get them more accurate, and then release them back to the you do stage where they do it by themselves. Okay. That's just the we do stage. That's example.
So this is another material that's going to be in the Canva that we share with you. And this is our T-chart example where you would say a word and they would have to check, did they hear the sh or the ch? So this again is as the student is becoming stronger and being able to isolate the two different sounds and to differentiate between them, but we need to build up to this. This is not the first thing you would do when teaching the sh sound because it is more challenging. You know your student, so if you think they're ready for it, then you could do this. But same thing, you would tell them to say the word, they would feel sh, ch, which, are they feeling the puff of air? Are they feeling the flow of air? And then they would just put a check mark underneath which sound they hear at the beginning. You could put this in as like a plastic sleeve protector, and they would just check off which sound they heard at the beginning of the word.
Okay, so we're not going to model the rest of these, but this is isolation for final sound with support and then the error correction. And then there's isolation for medial sound with support and then the error correction. So the rest of this section, it kind of breaks all of the activities down for you. So you have an example of each one.
Also, I did put these in the Canva as well. So these are some picture cards and word lists that you could use. I do just want to add too, as you're doing these activities, it's fine to preview the word list with picture cards to talk about the words, the meaning of the words, especially with newer students who may not know what these words mean. It's fine to show them the picture cards as like a vocabulary building before you start the activity. And then as you do the phonemic awareness activity, by all means, use these cards to support their vocabulary development.
And segment. Perfect. Okay. All right, so in the next activity we're going to model for you is under the category of segmentation. Now, technically, when a child is segmenting each sound of the word, they're isolating each sound of the word, right? So they need to be able to isolate one sound at a time before they could apply it to segmentation, where they're isolating multiple sounds, or you're asking them to isolate multiple phonemes in a word, right? Keep in mind, too, you could start very basic with just 2 phonemes, and then do 3 phonemes, and then 4, and so forth, right? So based on the student in front of you, you're going to adjust the activity on what is appropriate for them. So this is where I'm going to read off the procedure, and then Kathy is going to pull up another board with some chips for us so that you could physically see us do it.
Okay, so if you want to take a picture or anything, you could do that now. And then I'm going to go just to the bigger board that the student would have in front of them.
So could you pull down the chips
Oh,
for me?
sorry.
Nope, it's okay.
Oops. Hold on. Okay.
Perfect. So as Kathy is setting this up, this time you're not going to have the board set up because you're having the child segment the sounds themselves, right? In the isolation activity, I had my chips already set up how I needed them on the board because I wasn't having them segment each sound. I just wanted them to isolate the first sound. I was scaffolding it a little bit. Now I'm putting it all on them. So all the chips are going to be removed from the board, and then they're going to push the chips up as they say the sounds to segment the word. Okay,
So this is going to be blank. So I'm just trying to cover this. Okay, so you get the idea. The chips are going to be at the top and then the boxes will be blank. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, thank you for quickly figuring that out.
Okay, there we go.
Perfect. So I'm going to say to the student, you're going to repeat the word after me. And then as you push up the chips or push down the chips, you're going to say the sound you hear in the word. Okay, so Kathy, say fork. Fork. Push up the chips for each sound you hear in the word.
Or.
It's very simple, very straightforward. Kathy got it correct. So then I would just keep moving on and doing more words as time allows. Once again, if she erred, I need to stop, I need to model it, and I need her to correct her error. So we'll do an error correction here, if that's okay. So I'm going to correct the error for her with the same exact word. It's going to be me. So Kathy, our word was fork. I'm going to say it slowly this time to help me hear all the sounds. Fork. Now I'm going to push up one chip at a time as I say each sound. Mm-hmm. Fork. Now I want you to try.
We're having chip issues here. Okay. Oh, it was there.
It's okay.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right, here we go.
Oh, Hold on, I'm gonna give you
sorry,
direction. She's getting ahead of me, which a lot of our students like to do. So we got to stop them and say, okay.
Okay.
First, you're gonna say the word fork.
Fork.
Say it slowly.
Fork.
Okay. Pull down each chip and say each sound.
Or.
Beautiful. She got it correct. She ever corrected. She was able to do it by herself after I modeled. I could go back to the previous slide and use that procedure to give additional words. Same thing, right? You're kind of seeing the repetition here, right? If the child is continuing to error, we stop, we go to we do, and we do it together until we see that they're ready to move on.
Okay, so we have a really amazing question.
Okay.
Are all R control vowels one phoneme?
Yes. So there's going to be one chip, correct?
Yeah.
So O-R, I-R, U-R, E-R. Yes, they're one sound, one chip. Very good question.
Yes.
So even something like SH, it's 2 letters, but because it's one sound, we just pull up one chip because all we hear, sorry, it's 2 letters, one sound. So we're pulling up one chip because all we hear is one sound. That's a very good question.
Yes, and beginning blends like st, st, sl are 2 chips.
Because you hear 2 separate sounds.
So you would go st.
Okay, or something like TCH, which is 3 letters, but it's still one sound, so it only gets one chip.
Any other questions before we go? Should the letters be visible for the student to sound out?
Not here. That's a very good question. So if you're doing a phonemic awareness activity, there's no letters presented. However, when we get to a different part, we'll show you how you could implement letters to make it a little bit more challenging. But when it comes to phonemic awareness activity, we're not having the child read or spell the word. Therefore, we could use any word, even if the child doesn't know the sounds in that or doesn't know how to read the sounds in those words, because we're not asking them to read or spell. The one thing for multi-language learners is that you probably wouldn't select a word that it doesn't have sounds that are transferable. So that would be your little like adjustment that you would make for them. But for any other student, you could use any words because we're not asking them to read or spell the word. It's done orally. Good question.
Someone also just asked if STR would be 3
Yes.
chips.
Yes,
So,
because it's 3 separate sounds. In the program that I teach for Fairleigh Dickinson, we call those clusters, and clusters, you hear each sound separately. Therefore, they each get their own chip because a chip represents a sound.
Okay.
Can you move to the fingers? Okay, this is something we just wanted to throw in and show you. So technically, teaching a child to segment the sounds and words is helping with spelling. Oh, could you flip it to the finger one? Sorry. Oh,
This one?
yeah,
Okay.
perfect, right? So that it's helping them to spell words more accurately, right? You could plot a word list in front of a student, they could memorize it. Like most typical students can memorize the word list, get 100, but that's not making them necessarily good spellers because it's just memorization. What good spellers are is students or children who are able to segment the sounds, hold on to those sounds, remember the letters that go with those sounds and write it on paper. A lot of steps. And that's what phonemic awareness of segmentation is help building the foundation for. So after you do segmentation with the chips and the child really has it, you could introduce finger spelling to them. And why this is so great is because they're not in front of you all day. They're going to walk out into another teacher. They're going to go home. They're going to whatever. They're not going to always be with you, and they can't bring a bag of chips everywhere they go. The other teachers are going to be like, what are you having the students do? But they have their fingers with them, right? So you could teach a child to segment on their fingers so that if they're in another class and they're trying to spell a word accurately, they have their fingers to segment the sounds. Okay, so we're going to do one quickly if that's okay with you. Okay, you're going to repeat the word after me, then use your fingers to say each sound separately. Say pot.
Pot.
Fingers spell pot.
So I'm a right-handed person. So I'm going to use my left hand because
when you're spelling, your pencil's in your right hand,
Right.
and these are now your manipulatives. You don't want to have to put them down to go pick up the pencil. You want to have this hand out so that they could use their fingers to spell the word.
Okay. Yes, right. So I'm like writing with my right hand. And then so I have my pencil in my right hand. And then in my left hand, I'm going to do
Perfect. So yes, a right-handed student is going to use their left hand facing them. So their thumb is on their left-hand side because you want them to finger stretch the word in the correct order that you would spell a word or read a word. So left to right, right? And it's going to be backwards for the teacher, but it's going to be correct for them. Now, if they're a left-handed student, their pencil is in their left hand, they're finger stretching with their right hand. But we want the sounds to go in order again. So this time, instead of holding it up, right, it's hard for a little kid to put up their pinky and hold those fingers up. It could be challenging. They might be able to do it fine. But usually what we say is you put your hand down on the table or on your lap, and then you tap out the sound using your thumb first, because it still puts it in the correct order for them. So this is just a strategy you could teach your student that they could take with them into the classroom or into other learning environments where they might need it for spelling. But keep in mind, when you do this activity, you have to have taught them what finger spelling is first, right? So you're going to probably start with the I do, and then we do, and now you do, if they don't know what it is. And the error correction, it's the same thing. I'm not going to model through it all. You're going to do it using your fingers. They're going to do it again, the same word. So they error correct using their fingers, and you're going to go back to the procedure as appropriately. Perfect. Let's move to, because of timing.
Okay.
It's
Blending.
8:06. Let's
Yeah.
just do at least one blending.
Yeah.
We know it's 8:06, so I understand if people have to go. I know time is important and everyone has busy lives. So feel free if you have to go, that's totally fine. But we're going to do a couple more as we can to squeeze some more in. So the next one is a blending activity with support. Okay, a lot of programs do blending drills that have graph themes attached to it, letters attached to it. And that's different than this phonemic awareness subset, okay? So we're going to show you blending as phonemic awareness with support. So same thing, you're going to have your boxes, you're going to have your chips, and Kathy is going to pull that up for me so that she can model it and I could show it to you.
This one.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Does it move this one or is it the one below?
Oh,
Yeah, the
this
car
one?
one or
Yeah.
the car one, it doesn't matter.
Okay, let's do the car.
Oh, but there's no
So-
chips.
Oh,
So do the other one.
okay, sorry. These are also all in the Canva too. Okay.
Can you put 3 chips? Perfect. So here, once again, I'm not having them segment. I'm not giving them the word. I want them to tell me the word, right? So I can't say, this is the word, segment, put the chips out, and then tell me the word. It doesn't make sense, right? So I'm going to set up the board with the amount of appropriate chips that I need. So my word has 3 sounds, so I'm going to put 3 chips. And then I'm going to do the procedure with the student.
Can I just add, if you're using picture cards, you're not going to show them the picture
point.
card until after they blend it, because that, if they know the word from the picture card,
Mhm.
that will give it away. So
Yeah, so then it makes the skill. Yeah. Okay, so repeat each sound, then say the sounds together without stopping to make the word. Watch me, I'm gonna point and say each sound. S, at. You point and say each sound.
s, at,
Great, blend it together. What's your word?
at, sat.
Beautiful. So Kathy did it perfectly. She was able to hold on to those sounds and blend it together to create the word. Now, keep in mind, you could start with 2 phonemes, depending on your child's ability. You could start with larger units like syllables, depending on your child's ability. Okay, but for this activity, we decided to do 3 sounds or 3 phonemes. So now say that Kathy wasn't able to blend it or she didn't say the sounds correctly. Same thing. I'm going to go through an error correction. I'm going to model it. Then Kathy's going to do it with the same exact word. And if she gets it, we're going to try again the same procedure with additional words. And once again, if they struggle and they're not getting it and they're still erroring, well, we need to stop and we need to go to the we do stage and we need to practice this. And we may even have to go back to just 2 phonemes because we're struggling too much, right? So we always might have to, we have to monitor our students as we do these activities.
Okay, so we have some comments. I see some of these phonics curriculums show the phoneme and it does confuse them
Correct.
with spelling.
Okay, yeah.
How do we access the Canva? So we will give you a link to the Padlet and we'll show you that too in a minute with all the resources.
So I do want to, if we have time, I want to do the one with the cards because I know that keeps coming up,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it keeps coming up of some phonics programs putting phonemes or graphemes in front of them and then having the child use these cards to blend a word to make real words or nonsense words. So yes, this is an activity, but this is not a phonemic awareness activity. This is a blending drill activity. The child needs to be able to blend sounds orally without any letters attached to it first before this can be done, right? This is a phonics decoding. We talked about this. You need your phonemic awareness first, and then it's the foundation for phonics decoding. In this situation, when you're putting graphemes or letters in front of the student, the only letters that you could put in front of the student are the letters that the student was taught and the sounds that they know. Okay, so you can't use any sound now. You're only placing what they know in front of them. So that's the difference here. This helps with blending for reading or decoding for reading. So yes, this skill is beneficial when that child is ready and when the child needs help blending those letters together to create a word. So if you have a child whose phonological awareness is getting there and we're working on it and they're starting to read, right? Because we're also teaching phonics and phonics decoding along with phonemic awareness. It's not like we're teaching one and then we're teaching this. They're going together because sometimes we get kids in 4th grade. We can't just do phonological awareness or phonemic awareness and then go decide we're going to teach them decoding. We have to do it together, right? So when we're doing this, we have to have the sounds that they know in front of them. And what this is doing is if you have a child who has a passage in front of them or a word list in front of them, and they're constantly having to go sh, ah, in order to automatically say the word, that means they need practice with blending. So this activity will help blending those sounds together, right? So one way to do it, you don't have to take it out, you're fine. I'm just gonna put my mouse here. What you would have is a deck of cards in the beginning. And sometimes you could color coordinate it. You don't have to. A deck of cards in the middle and a deck of cards at the end. And these cards, the sounds that you put in the beginning have to be sounds in the beginning in our language. Can't just be a random sound. Like AY can't go in the beginning. It doesn't appear in the beginning of any words in our language, right? It goes at the end. And then I have to have sounds in the middle that usually typically appear in the middle of a word, and then sounds at the end. And what I'm going to do is the child's going to tap and go shh. Now say those sounds together without letting go. Sh, ap. Okay, now say it faster. Shap. What's the word? Shap. So I'm teaching them that process of holding on to those sounds to say them quickly together to produce the word to help with blending and to help with decoding. So this is the drill that a lot of people see, and this is different than phonemic awareness, but still very beneficial depending on the struggles your student is having or the student that you're working with and what difficulties they're having. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And for multilingual learners too, you want to discuss SHAP, like that's not a
Yes.
word. And then you can have, when you come across words like we just taught ship, for example. So, when we get to the I, you can have that picture card. Oh, we just talked about this ship to reinforce the vocabulary and help them realize some of these words are silly words and some are real words.
Mm-hmm. So then all you would do is flip one card at a time and they would go tap and say each sound, say the sounds together, and then say the word. And then you would flip another card and it's just practicing blending here. And they're going to get real words. They're going to get nonsense words. The point is application. So it doesn't have to be all real words, but it must be sounds they know. Okay. It's 8:14. Do you want
Okay, Kathy, how much time do we have here? Do I?
The presentation runs till 8:30.
Okay, so we have time.
Perfect.
I
Okay.
did want to show this because we've
Mhm.
been talking about our sound chart. And so again, using the phonemes, this is a really fun activity to do with your multilingual
Mhm.
learners or with any child. So you could use this for blending, for segmenting. So for example, I would say the sounds. So for example, say I said k, a, t, and the child would circle each sound on the mat. So they're identifying the sounds, they're finding them, they're circling them, and then I would have them go and blend them together, and they can connect them with their pen and blend the sounds together with like a dry erase marker. Just put this into a plastic sleeve,
Mhm.
and this is so much fun. They enjoy this so much.
Yeah.
So we talked about this at our last PDs. So this is another way now you can use this chart, not only for helping them read and write, but
Mhm.
now for helping them with improving their blending.
Perfect. Also, Kathy has the consonants and short vowels. If your child is more advanced, you could add the R controls, you could add Magic E, you could add the other syllable types and have that in there for them to work with as well.
Okay.
So we're to manipulation PA activities. These are the advanced skills, right? These tend to become more challenging, especially when you're manipulating the medial sound for the student. The initial sound tends to be easier. Final, you might see some deficits. And then the medial tends to be very hard, especially when you're asking them to identify or to substitute a sound in a blend. That becomes very challenging. So just keep in mind with these activities, you might be in the we do stage for a little while before you're able to progress to the child doing it by themselves. And that's okay, that's common. Where the other activities in isolation, you might see yourself moving quickly through the stages and child picking it up very fast. That's very common. So the one that we're going to do right now is substitution with support. So same thing, we broke it down with support, orally, with support, orally. So I'm going to have Kathy pull up the board again because we need our board and chips because we're using manipulatives for this one. Okay, perfect. So same thing here. I'm going to have my board set up for the student in front of them with the appropriate amount of sounds because I don't want them to segment and then do this. I just want them to substitute a sound. However, if your child is advanced, yeah, you could have them segment and then substitute. So it depends on who's in front of you. For this situation, my chips are set up and I'm going to have the child substitute the initial sound. Okay, so I'm going to say to the student, repeat the word and touch the chip that represents the sh sound. And then we're going to change it to the ch sound. Okay, so say shop, shop. Touch the chip that represents sh. Replace the chip with a new chip while saying ch. Ch. What's your new word? Chop. Perfect. Okay. So that was the activity. Kathy got it correct. I move on to other words and I keep doing it just like that. However, same thing. If the child errors on it, I need to stop. I need to error correct. So I'm going to model it. You want to actually do this one? Sure. Okay. So I'm going to use the same word shop. I'm going to model it. I'm going to say, okay, our word was shop. I'm going to touch the chip that says shh. And now I'm going to replace it with ch. My new word is chop. Now you try. Say shop, shop. Touch the chip that represents shh, shh. Okay, replace it with ch. Ch. What's the word? Chop. Now I'm going to add another scaffold in here. Sometimes that might not be enough for the student because their brain is so focusing on switching those sounds that they forget the other letters. So sometimes a child, after they switch, they might benefit from going ch, ah. What's the new word? Chop. Okay. And that's okay. If they have to do that, you could still go back to the procedure the other way and allow them to do that to answer all the other words correctly. If the child still can't do it, that's when we stop and we go into the we do stage and you have your mat and chips and they have their mat and chips and we do it together until the child's ready to move on.
All right. Are there any questions? I lost my messages. Here we go. If students are successful, if students are successful with blending 2 sounds, but drop the first sound when blending 3 sounds, how long do the we do practice before there are concerns?
That's dependent on the child. You might have to stay in we do for a while, and that's okay. I mean, it also depends on the child in front of you. Is their working memory poor? What other deficits do they have, right? You might have to, there's other activities and strategies we could implement, but I feel like that's a whole nother, unfortunately, lecture. But there's no time frame that is like if you stay in this for 3 days and they still don't get it, then that's a concern. There's no frame, right? There's times I have students that I work with for intervention for reading kindergarten and first grade. We could be in we do for 1 day and they get it like that, right? And then there's times we're in it for weeks because they just really need that repetition and that practice and that practice. We may stay there, or we might go to another skill and practice a different skill that's different than that, and then go back to give them a break. At the same time, we're continuing to teach phonics and decoding as well. So there's no time frame per se for each category.
Sometimes, especially because the phonemes are new to them, if they're challenging phonemes, go back to phonemes that transfer if you can
That's true.
and see if that helps. Okay, any advice on how to handle instruction when we have mixed levels of multilingual students in one class? I teach upper elementary with newcomers coming with little literacy skills in the L1 in the same class as students who are long-term ELL. So students who have been in the program for a while. I use small group instruction, but I feel like we are moving slowly as I have many groups with different needs.
That's definitely challenges that we face as teachers. And I think, to be honest with you, you're probably doing the right thing by breaking them into small groups based off of their deficits so that you could focus in closely. Sometimes certain things can overlap, right? So if a child are segmenting, but some are working on 2 phonemes, some are working on 3, it's okay to still put those together if they're still in the same category, but different levels in that category. But I think, unfortunately, you are on the right track with that. And it's just patience. That's the challenge of having large groups and different levels of students within the classroom. But that's the exact right approach, and that's how I would do it as well.
And sometimes too, the students who are long-term Ls, they might have deficits in some of the same skills that the newcomers have. So, I mean, it is a possibility always. So you could even sometimes group them just like by the skill that they have in common that they need. Okay. So we have about 7 minutes. I do want to take some time to just show you the Padlet. Did you want to add anything else, Dena?
Sure. Yeah. Just one more thing. These activities that we showed you is how I would teach it if it's a deficit, right? Florida Research for Reading has a website that has kindergarten through 5th grade and a bunch of phonemic awareness skills broken down, and they have more game-like or center-like activities. So usually in my classroom, or when I'm working with students outside the classroom, if once I taught them the skill the way that I showed you and I feel like they're comfortable, I want to make it a little more engaging, or I want a center that they could work with another friend, I'll pull one of those activities from that website because it's a lot more fun and game-like for them. So it's another way to practice. So just keep in mind, this is more of like direct instruction approach to teaching these. And then there are like games that are based off of phonemic awareness skills that you could use as centers or just use as a whole class to just get some fun practice in.
So someone asked if that is UFly. That is not UFly. It's a different
Correct.
website. It is in the Padlet. So again, everything that we talked about is in the Padlet, which I will show you in a minute. So this is the Canva I just want to show you, which is also in the Padlet. And then I also made a template for building a phonological awareness lesson. So let's go through those really quick. We have about 6 minutes. So this is the Canva with just some different boards for you. You can take these little ships and put them on popsicle sticks and have the child blend. If you're doing blending, they can blend through the phonemes. Here's the isolation of the SH versus the CH. These are just different word lists you can use for SH in the initial and final position and CH in the initial and final position. These are word cards that go with all of the words that I gave you in the word list. So you can preview the vocabulary with the student before doing the activities. So you can see that the words are listed right on the paper here. So all of that, and then just some other options for boards that you can use. I made some word lists for final sound isolation of P, B, T, K, and G, which do not exist in Spanish. So these are nice to target to help children hear those ending sounds that can be really difficult for them. So those are here for you. And then let me just pull up the Padlet. Any questions while I'm pulling up the Padlet? So we will get you the website in a second. Do you have any tips for vowel confusion? Dena, do you want to take that one?
Tips and as in different activities to do.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's tons of activities you could do. I mean, if they're confusing, it depends what they're confusing, right? If they're confusing just short vowels in general, you're gonna just take it one at a time, and could do just basic activities of when I say a word, you're gonna stand up if you hear that vowel in the middle of that word, right? So if the word was cat, if you're doing short A and you're gonna say, okay, the sound is you're gonna stand up every time you hear in the word cat, and they'll stand up. Stop, and you would just switch through different words. When it comes to vowel confusion, it's literally just practicing the child hearing the sounds, which is doing phonemic awareness activities, but you have to take it one vowel at a time. Like I would start with one vowel and clear that up before I throw another vowel in, before I do an activity of like, do you hear versus right? I need to make sure that they could hear by itself without having evolved in any of the words. So it's just doing those vowels in isolation and practicing them with different activities through phonemic awareness before you combine the vowels, which is more challenging. So you might have to take a step back or two.
And also maybe see like which vowel they're confusing the most and just start with that.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here are the assessments that were in the presentation, so you can check those out. Here are 2 very helpful sites for cross-linguistic transfer. And then here are all the lesson materials from today. I just want to show you real quick the lesson planning template. So I put, for example, some of the standards at the top. And then you could plan on building some of that vocabulary knowledge before you start. And then, so the skills are like your content objective, right? So are they segmenting? Are they blending? You know, those, are they isolating? Those are the content skills. And then our language objective would really be what are we planning for cross-linguistic transfer? Are we really focusing on the skill and we're going to use the words with sounds that transfer from their L1 to the L2? Or is this really a focus on, you know, a new sound that they have to learn to isolate and to produce, right? We have to teach them, how are they going to move their lips? Where's their tongue? And then I gave you some choices of activities. So like we told you, the thumbs up, thumbs down. Maybe they're at the advanced stage and they're just orally blending now and orally segmenting. So there are different options there for activities. And then you can write your word list and say they got 8 out of 10. You would write that here with the percentage and then any observations that you notice throughout the lesson. So any questions on any of the materials or anything in the Padlet? I also put, Dena and I put some good research in here. This is a great guide for educators on phonemic awareness. So I would definitely check that out. Here's Kilpatrick's book that who we spoke about. And here's that Florida Center for Reading Research. And I'll just show you right here.
It's a really great way to get center activities that are grade appropriate and broken into the categories that we just discussed. So it goes from kindergarten, it has a 5th grade, and I also believe it does have Spanish Student Center activity there as
right
well.
here. Yeah.
So this is a good resource to get some game-like type of phonemic awareness activities.
They're all right here. So syllables, deletion.
And everything's there. You print it, the directions, the picture cards, the mats, everything that you would need to do the activity.
Can you share the link for the Padlet? It's not in the presentation.
Oh, I put it in the chat too. Let me see.
I didn't see it in the chat. Oh, there it is. I see it now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, for older learners, would you still use 1-syllable words? It depends like what your purpose is.
Correct. If you give them an assessment and their deficit is in one of those categories, you may start with 1-syllable words and then progress. And you might be able to move quicker because they're older, but just because they're older doesn't mean that they're able to do it in 1-syllable words, right? It really depends on the student. So it's kind of monitoring where that student is and picking appropriately. For multisyllabic words, these activities will be done a little bit differently. So keep that in mind as well.
Yes. And next year we're focusing on older students more. So we will have some activities to address that. What would the order for teaching substitution, insertion, deletion be? I might have missed it. Yes, we did show that.
So
Zoom is just...
It's okay. So for any of those categories, right, you might have to not teach all of them. So again, it's based off of where the deficit is. You always want to start with initial sound and then move to final sound and then to medial sound, because medial sound is always the hardest. So adding in a sound is easier, right? If I said it, add s to the beginning, that's easier than if I said like, you could even do syllables. I can't think of a word off. If I said
like mailbox,
or if I said mail, add box to the end, that is easier because it's larger parts. I'm adding syllables, but it's also harder for that because I'm adding it to the end. So addition, then deletion, and then substitution, and then initial sound, final sound, medial sound, if that makes sense. So the categories would be addition, deletion, then substitution. And then in those categories, I would work on initial sound first, final sound, and then medial sounds.
Okay, I think those are all the questions. Thank you all so much. Please reach out with any other questions. I hope you find the materials helpful. And again, I apologize for the late start. It was a very dark night and I was on top of a hill and took a wrong turn, and I do apologize.
Thank you, everyone, for having me. I hope that was beneficial and that you could use some of it in your classroom. My contact is also there, so if there's a activity you weren't sure about and you want me to just go over it, feel free to contact us and I'd be happy to address those questions.
Excuse
And
me?
I was just going to say, if you want a professional development certificate, please complete the Google form. Make sure the email address that you use is a personal one so it does not get blocked. Thanks. And I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.
Oh, can I ask one question? Or you can stop